Hi, I'm Joe Polizzi, and this is the Content Inc. podcast. 5 minutes every Monday for content creators who desire to be content entrepreneurs. Hi everyone, I am very excited to release our next Content Inc. book tour interview. You know, we have a few more weeks of Thursday episodes interviewing a successful Content Inc. case study. I hope you've enjoyed them so far, and if you have, please take 5 minutes and give the Content Inc. podcast a review on Apple or Spotify. Yes, go ahead, you can do it now. I'll wait. Anyways, today's episode features Kristin Bor, founder of Bearfoot Theory. I absolutely loved listening to Kristin's journey on her love of travel, creating one of the most popular van life destinations on the web. So here's the interview, lightly edited as always. You'll hear Ann Ginn from The Tilt chime in during the middle part, and then I'll close it out at the end. Enjoy. Right now, Kristin started Bearfoot Theory in 2014 after leaving her Washington, D.C. career in environmental policy behind. She was desperate to connect with nature, so she moved back west and started Bearfoot Theory to inspire others to get outside. She spends half her year at her home in Salt Lake City and the other half living and traveling out of her 4x4 Sprinter van, which is amazing, which I would love to do, but my wife will not let me. So Kristin, first, welcome to the room. So many things that we could start talking about, but I'd like to kick it off with this. Can you give me sort of the 3-minute origin story behind Bearfoot Theory, how you got started, why you started this whole thing? And I know 3 minutes is a short period of time, but just give us the overview and then we'll get into the specific questions about how you built the site.
Sure. Thanks so much, Joe. Hi, everybody. I'm super happy to be here. So I started Bearfoot Theory in 2014. I was working in Washington, D.C. I have a master's in environmental management and spent some time on the Hill and then worked at a nonprofit lobbying on behalf of environmental policy, good environmental policies. And I just started to realize that the DC life was not for me. That was never really in my plan. I just sort of ended up there I got a fellowship that took me there. So after 3 years there, I was seeing that this was not the long-term career path that I wanted to be on. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to travel more. I was starting to get the travel bug. And in doing some research, I stumbled on some travel blogs that talked about blogging as a career. And I had kept a blog for fun on some previous travels, but I had no idea it was something you could make money from. And so that really intrigued me. And so I started to look into it more. I found another blogger who, in my eyes, had made it at the time, who was offering like a one-on-one mentorship program. So I signed up for that and kind of just took it from there. A couple months later, once I felt like I had a good idea and, some foundational knowledge, I quit my job. I moved to Las Vegas, where I had an inexpensive place to live, where I was going to spend a year trying to get this thing off the ground. I wanted to spend more time doing outdoor stuff. It was what I could afford at the time in terms of travel, because I had just quit my job. I wasn't going to become one of those jet-setting travel bloggers. So I wanted to focus on, doing more local outdoor adventures and building my own skill set and sharing that with everybody on the blog. So that's kind of how I got started. And I guess I don't know if that was 3 minutes, but hopefully that was a good overview.
No, that was perfect. So take us up to what we look like today, and then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about how you built the site and how you built audience. But if somebody comes up to you and says, "What the heck is Bearfoot Theory, and what do you do, and who's your audience?" How would you respond to that?
Oh boy, so we've been working on our branding a lot lately, but our sort of tagline is that we empower people to get outside, we help them build confidence, and teach them how to get outside responsibly. So, we share destinations. We talk a lot about building your outdoor skill set. We talk about a lot about van life, because that's what I do, and we talk a lot about leave no trace. So helping people build a sense of responsibility when they're outdoors, and how to be, an environmentally minded outdoor enthusiast.
Did you have a specific audience? Because I want to talk about how you built the platform with blogging, and then I also want to talk about Pinterest and Instagram, where you've been very successful. But did you have a specific audience in mind? Was the audience you and people like you, or is the audience someone different? How did you find that audience? Because it seems like you found a home. There's a great community that you've built. I mean, did you have someone in mind as you were communicating when you started blogging?
Yes. So I think my audience was me, basically. People like me. I didn't grow up doing a lot of outdoor activities. I didn't hike and camp as a kid. Like, that was not the kind of vacation my family took. So, I maybe slept in a tent once with my family growing up. And even in college, I had these dreams of like wanting to go do outdoors things, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I always chickened out. And so after college, I started to kind of do, push myself a little bit more, learn. I got the gear and started taking some more trips. And just as I progressed through my 20s, I started to realize like what value the outdoors was adding to my life. And but it can be really intimidating for people who are just starting out. So when I was starting my blog, I was doing some research, and everything, all the resources I was looking at to try to learn were really speaking about like high adrenaline activities. So it was like base jumping and skiing and snowboarding and, I don't know, like other extreme sport type things. And that was getting all the media attention at the time. And I didn't really see that there was an outlet targeting outdoor beginners, specifically women. I do have a lot of men in my audience as well, because the van life stuff kind of attracts a lot of men to my blog. But there weren't really a lot of sort of tutorial type blogs to help women feel more empowered in the outdoors. And so as I was going on adventures and writing about them, I was sort of taking an angle of like, hey, I didn't grow up doing these things. I'm learning how to do them as an adult, and here's like what I've learned about doing them, and you can do it too. And that was kind of like my goal with my audience from the get-go.
So in the book, you're actually in the part of the book a lot where we talk about the content tilt, the differentiation. Is would that was that the starter? Was that where you said, "Look, we're targeting women. We're looking at outdoors. We're looking at beginner information." Did you feel that you had an opportunity to break through all the other content clutter out there because no one else was focusing it like you were, or was it something more than that where you said, I'm gonna look at it this way. My hook is this, and this is my angle, and this is why I have an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I don't know that I was targeting women specifically, but what I did know is that I had a background in communication. So when I worked on the Hill in Washington, D.C., my job was to break down complicated scientific information and explain it in a way that people from all ends of the spectrum could understand, whether you have a science background or not, whether you're just an average person, whether you're a policymaker. My job was to synthesize the complex information and make it understandable. So I wanted to take that skill that I developed in DC and apply it to people trying to learn about the outdoors. So, and I think that just kind of being able to explain things in a really simple but understandable way, and like finding the right balance of information. So, if you give people too much information, they might feel it's overwhelming and, that's just too much. Or if you don't give them enough, then they're just getting a teaser from you, and then they have to go somewhere else to get the supplemental information. And so my goal, targeting people who are kind of looking to expand their outdoor skill set, was to break it down in a really understandable way so they felt like this is something I can do.
Just so did when you started, now correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't have the idea that van life was sort of going to be one of the things you hung your hat on. Did that evolve? Was it right away, or then you said, no, there's something here with van life. I think that we should make this a focus of the site as well, or is that something different?
Yeah, so I got my van. So I started my blog in 2014. In 2015, I started to get the urge to get some sort of vehicle that I could sleep in more comfortably. I had a Subaru, and I was traveling alone, and I just didn't feel. Um, I wanted something that I was a little bit more self-contained in, especially as a female by myself on the road. And I started to kind of see more vans on Instagram, and it was like the movement was like gaining steam. And but that's not really like why I got a van. It was more because it was just going to help make my job so much easier. Like, I was driving home from a backpacking trip back to Vegas one night, and I was driving by the Grand Canyon. I hadn't been to the Grand Canyon ever as an adult, but the weather was really crummy, and I was like eager to get home and edit my photos for my trip. And that's sort of where I got the idea of, well, if I had a van, I could just park, I could sleep, get my editing done, and then I could see what the weather's like tomorrow. And that's sort of what sparked my initial interest in getting a van. And so in 2016, I got a van. I published a video on YouTube that went totally viral, got over 1 million views. And that's when I was like, okay, like this is going to be something I start to write more about. It's obviously something people are interested in. I was getting a lot of traffic on my website on the tour of my van from YouTube and just from Google. And and then since then, the movement has just grown exponentially. And so there's more and more and more people looking to get into it. And now I have the experience to share about, what's worked for me and what hasn't. And so we kind of just try to share that information in a way that inspires people who are thinking about this lifestyle, that, it's attainable and here's how.
That's such an interesting take. It's very similar. If you know Jay Bear, Jay started blogging about marketing a long, long time ago. But in 2007, 2008, he just started blogging about social media, and then everything just took off. And he said, "Well, I'm just going to start creating more and more content on social media." And then he had revolved this entire business around social media. So it sounds like you just looked at a lot of the data. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to take off." But before that, you were just blogging about the outdoor side, outdoor adventures, and then you sort of made the pivot to go more toward van life. How long did it take? Like, give us the idea of when you started blogging, how much were you blogging, and then made this little bit of a pivot to van life.
Sure. So we still write a lot about the outdoors. So I wouldn't say it's all van life, but we have a very robust van life section on our website. But I now, oh boy, as far as the evolution, it's hard to say, but now I would guess that the van life stuff probably makes up anywhere from a third to half of our traffic. But that's a best guess. But I think it's not like it replaced the outdoor content, but it just helped bolster my traffic overall. And because I write about van life from a very outdoors perspective, like, I'm doing van life, so I can have access to all these places that I want to recreate, which I also write about on the blog. And so they kind of fit really nicely together. And I think just it's helped me grow the blog overall, not just the van life stuff, because people maybe find my website because of the van life, and then they're like, oh, and she has all this other travel related content for once we have our van that we can use to plan our travels.
So you had the blog as the platform. You started to diversify into YouTube and other areas. What have been the best uh, strategies that you've used to build audience over time, where you've just said, "Oh, this is it"? Because I know as content creators, we all tinker with things, but along the way, your traffic has just shot through the moon. So, what are some things that you've really done that made the difference?
Sure. So Google search traffic has always been our biggest driver. From the very get go, I learned about SEO. I installed Yoast on my blog from day one and was trying to optimize the post as best as I knew how. And so that's always been number one, and Pinterest has been number two. So Pinterest is getting a little bit harder. So, we're spending more time making new pins, and we use Tailwind to schedule. But I would say Google has been the most reliable. And now we spend a lot of time just updating old content, making sure it's optimized, making sure the The links are still valid, especially if we have a lot of affiliate links to gear and stuff in our posts, and we want to make sure that those are still accurate. And so we just spend time updating old posts, making sure they're optimized for SEO, and that's really helped revive traffic to some of those posts that I wrote a long time ago. And, now we're kind of learning more refined strategies for, and just like digging a little bit deeper in the research, because it's a little bit more competitive. So you really do have to, you can't just pick the best guess that you think, or people are going to search for. We use SEMrush to do all of our SEO research, and it's a really helpful tool for, figuring out what we think we can rank for compared to what things actually have the most traffic.
No, SEMrush is great, and then I love. We've done quite a few interviews now, and it's amazing how many people talk about refreshing old content is sort of a key strategy, and so few people do that. I love to hear that. So just a quick room reset, everyone. I know we had some few new people come in. You're part of the Content Inc. book tour. We're talking to Kristin Bor from Bearfoot Theory about how she created one of the web's leading outdoor adventure sites. If you would like to tweet this out, let people know where you're at, that would be fantastic. Kristin, I want to talk about, of course, I'd like you to talk about Instagram too, because you're very popular on Instagram, but I haven't talked to anyone that's really done an effective job with Pinterest. Of course, I don't have a lot of retail context, but when I found out that you were hitting home runs on Pinterest, I just thought that was fascinating. Can you talk about how you fell into that? Was that a strategy? And what have you done on Pinterest from a regular content creation standpoint that's really made a difference there?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not sure I have Pinterest all figured out. I think some of it's just been a little bit of luck, to be honest. But so I've tried a number of things there. But again, from day one of my blog, I was making pins for Pinterest. So I started it from the very beginning. And every single blog post had a pin embedded in the post so people could share that pin. So pins that we make are always vertically oriented. So portrait mode photo with a text overlay of the photo. Over time, I've learned that, making sure the font is big, bold, and easy to read are key. You see a lot of whimsical type fonts on Pinterest, and I think, they work for some people, but I just think having it be really easy to read is important because people are scrolling just like they do on every other social platform. And you need a nice photo with easy to read text to catch people's eye. And portrait does better because it takes up more room on the screen, just as photos do on Instagram. So that's kind of how I started with that. And when I first started, there were I don't know if these exist anymore, but there were Facebook groups for new bloggers. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, we're all new travel bloggers. I'll share one of your pins if you share one of mine. So it was like we put the link to a pin. And so I think things like that still exist, but I think now Tailwind has their tribes, and that's sort of similar. It's like you upload your pins to these groups in Tailwind where it's sort of a mutual agreement that when you share something, someone will share one of your things. So, but to backtrack a little bit, after I got enough blog content and I realized that I need to be pinning more regularly. I don't just pin I want my pin once. I pin it to multiple boards across a period of time. So, I've experimented with having a VA do it, a virtual assistant, and that worked okay for a little while. But ultimately, what's worked best for me is just using Tailwind as a scheduler. Again, my engagement and my click throughs from Pinterest have been going down a little bit. And I think that that's because now they're sort of prioritizing advertisers on the platform and people who are willing to pay for promoted pins. And we haven't done too much of that. So, that's my guess for, why it's becoming a little bit harder. And I think the platform itself is just getting busier as more and more bloggers are using it to help get their content out. But, so now we use Tailwind. I don't really do the tribe thing anymore where, I share other people's in exchange for sharing one of mine. I just share content that I think would be helpful to my readers. But as far as my boards, I have one board that is Bearfoot Theory blog posts, and my main pin from every blog post is on that board, and that's my highest engagement board. And then I also have boards broken down by category. So, I'll have day hikes, backpacking, and then I have a board for every state that we write about. I have boards for, other for van life and other sort of categories that mirror the categories on my blog. And so every time I create a new blog post or I update the pin, so every time we go back and update an old blog post, we always also create a new pin. Then we'll pin that to all the different boards using Tailwind that apply to that blog post that, would make sense as far as the category. So I hope that that's sort of an overview of how we use it.
No, that's great. So, just take us through your production schedule, so we're clear. So, how many times a week do you have a blog post? And then it sounds like you've got multiple pieces of content that you use on Pinterest and Instagram, and what else? So, just to give everyone an idea of, you've got a content factory going on here. What does it look like?
That's a great question. So we, right now, we're probably doing about one new blog post a week and refreshing two old ones. Sometimes we'll republish an old one with like a new publication date if it's been long enough since we updated it. Other times, and that will move it to the top of the blog roll. Otherwise, we're just doing updates and leaving the date the same. So that's kind of what the blog post calendar looks like. It's like one new one old one, and then just one update every week. And then we'll share every time we do that for an old or new blog post. We'll share it on Instagram stories. We share it on Pinterest and generally Facebook as well. Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of.
And you're doing this half the time on the road, correct? I know that you have a wonderful team as well, but you know, correct. I mean, you're in your Sprinter van and you're doing a lot of this stuff from the road, and you're looking for Wi-Fi connections. Correct? Is that how it works?
Yeah, yes, I'm in my van right now, actually.
There you
uh,
go.
um, but yes, I have a wonderful team. I think you talked with Linda. She kind of
Hmm.
manages the blog process right now. And then we have two other amazing women who one lives in a van as well, and the other has a mountain biking blog called Two Wheeled Wanderer, Becky. And they kind of help with the updating old posts, getting things formatted. We have an editorial calendar that we created in a Google sheet, which kind of has it has 4 tabs on the bottom for each season: spring, summer, fall, winter. And then on each tab we have it organized by month. And so each month we have a list of new posts, posts that need to be republished, and then posts that just need a quick update. And then we assign them to whoever is going to work on them with the link and any notes in there as far as what needs to be updated. And then once things are done, there's check boxes for, the blog and then all the social channels, so we know what's been shared on which channels.
No, that's perfect. So I'm going to pass it off to Anne. She has a couple of questions, and then of course, if anyone has questions, we'd love to hear from you now. Would you mind breaking down as specific as you can the revenue, different types of revenue that you drive, different sales, and some of the decisions that you made over the years, so that you can live the best life that you're living right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So affiliates are our number one source of revenue. We have a few really awesome affiliate partnerships with different gear companies. Most people here have probably heard of REI. It's the biggest outdoor retailer in the country, and they're one of my biggest partners. Just in case anybody here doesn't know how affiliates work, I put the links in a gear list, for example, of this is what I use in my van, or this is what I use on a backpacking trip. I link to, a number of retailers, and I get commission if somebody buys anything from that website, as long as I was the person who referred them. So we do a lot of like gear roundups. So we'll do like the best tents of 2021, and we update that every year. And then we'll have a list of like 10 different tents, and for each one we'll have a link that says like check price, REI, backcountry, and maybe the company that makes the tent directly from their website, with affiliate links to 3 different places. And that's been really helpful, because that way, if it's depending on, maybe there's a sale or whatever, people can find it where they can purchase it from any of those 3, and we're still getting that affiliate revenue. And so that's been really helpful to kind of diversify and help us bring in revenue from different retailers, so we don't have all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. We also do some Amazon, but that is one of our smaller affiliate. Like, we do less for them than some of these other partners that we work with that are more focused on outdoor gear. We make money from banner ads. That's probably the second, although it might be tied with sponsored work. But we work with Ad Thrive on our banner ads, and that's been it's been huge for us. I waited probably 3 years before I installed banner ads on my site. I thought they were ugly. I thought, oh, people aren't going to read my blog if I have banner ads. Well, as soon as I installed them and saw the potential for earning and how that could help me afford, my first real assistant, I thought this is, an easy decision for me to keep those on. And, as our traffic's grown, the banner ad revenue has grown over time. So that's been great. And then we do sponsored work. So we work with a variety of outdoor brands, the occasional van related brand, and that can be sponsored on Instagram. It can be sponsored blog work, occasionally YouTube videos, although I don't do too many of those anymore, because the blog is just, where we get the most traffic. We even do sponsored emails, and that's been a really easy way for us to just make some money. We, mention a product in our email, say, hey, this email is sponsored by so-and-so. And that's like a no-brainer for us, because it's really easy and doesn't take a lot of time. So, and then, sorry, one other one. Sometimes I do some work with tourism boards, but that would also kind of be under a sponsorship category. But, I'll cover a destination and share pictures and itineraries and stuff on my blog.
No, that it's fascinating how many different lines of revenue you have. And what's interesting is, I've heard this from another bunch of other content entrepreneurs. We're seeing this move back to banner ads, ad content, free content versus all the paid Substack type content. So it's funny how you saw this big wave of paid newsletters, and you will continue to see that. But I think you're going to see a wave back to free content, ungated content, and you're seeing more, believe it or not, everything comes back, right? It's just crazy the way things work. So I'm going to pass it off to Ann Ginn right now, editor for The Tilt. And you can take it away. Everyone if you have a question for Kristin, now will be the time. Just click the button at the bottom, and we'd love to get your questions. So Ann, you can kick this off first. Go ahead.
That's great. I appreciate all the interesting info. And one of the things you just mentioned was about sending an email out to your audience with a link from that. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you develop your email audience? Because some people would think, oh, a blog, you don't necessarily know who's visiting, and talk to me a little bit about your email strategy.
Sure. So we use ConvertKit for our emails, and we have 2 main segments. So we have people who are signed up for our general outdoor Bearfoot Theory emails that we send out every Monday. And we're testing some new strategies, but what's been working recently is we used to send out emails that just kind of had the 3 latest posts on the blog, but they were completely unrelated. They maybe one would be about hikes in Utah, the other would be about tips for road tripping with your dog, and then another one would be about leave no trace. And that worked okay. But now we're doing our emails based on topics. So we'll have like this week's email is just about hiking, and we'll have 3 hiking related posts. The subject is about hiking, so people know exactly what they're getting when they open it up. And that's been performing better so far. It's kind of a new thing that we're testing, and that's been working out pretty good. And then we have another segment, people who sign up for our van related emails, because they're related but different. And and then we send those out once a week as well, usually on Sundays. And that's kind of more like 1 or 2 new posts that, are relevant to van life. And yeah, so that's our basic email strategy. We have sign up forms all over the website, but the ones that have been performing the best for us recently are checklists. So we create packing checklists for different types of trips. So we have a van life packing checklist, we have a day hiking checklist, a backpacking trip checklist. We even have a van life grocery checklist that we created, and we embed them in different blog posts that they're related to. And those have been performing better than any of the other forms on our website. So our email list now is, we have about 20,000 people on our email list, and I think about a 30 to 35% open rate, depending on, the subject. So yeah, that's just an overview.
It's great. It's very interesting, the segmentation and what performs well, because I think that's a risk, right? When you go to a singular topic, how could you might alienate some of your audience, or not alienate, but you know what I'm saying from that. So if any of you in the audience have a question, please just tap the hand button in your lower right of your screen and we will get you up on stage. Before that, I have a question around your brand partnerships, and you have some strong brand partnerships, but I'm curious of kind of what the challenges are, particularly when you're doing reviews of products and things like that. Do you face any challenges, and make sure that your brand partnership agreements, like how do those spell out what you're allowed to do versus what you're not allowed to do?
Yes. So let's see where to start. The brand work can be kind of tough because there's a lot of work that goes into the negotiations before you even start the real work. And so, we spend a lot of time emailing back and forth and back and forth and pitching brands that we want to work with. And, a lot of them never work out. So it can be really frustrating to be spending so much time on the front end, to maybe they want to see it through or not. One challenge that we found is that a lot of brands are like, "Oh, we want to work with you," but then we tell them our pricing and then they just ghost us, like it's out of their budget. And so we've been trying to figure out a way to make that information more readily available without like kicking ourselves in the shins. I think that's the saying, because certain different brands have different budgets, and bigger brands have more money, and so we don't want to give them our pricing and then like they could have spent a lot more if we hadn't been so forthcoming. So trying to find that balance with you know how we share our information on pricing while still saving time and not having to go through this back and forth only to find that the what we want is not within the realm of what's possible for a brand.
Yeah, that's the ongoing challenge for everybody, is so you don't lowball yourself and post your rates from that. And it really looks like a commodity too. At times it can feel like that, to get through. So talk to your audience. How do you interact with your audience, or find out what they're interested in? Are you looking at traffic for topics, or angles? Because you've been doing this a while, so I'm sure you've hit all the big topics of getting down into the more niche areas.
So our content strategy is driven by a few different things. It's like, one, what me and my team is doing and what we have experience with. For instance, I recently transitioned about a year and a half ago to a plant-based lifestyle, or plant-based diet. So we've been writing a little bit more about that and kind of, dipping our toes a little bit more into like the outdoor wellness kind of, like healthy lifestyle, side of things. The second is, or like if I have a certain trip, obviously that makes sense to write about on the blog. The second is the SEO potential. Unless something's really near and dear to my heart and I feel really passionate about writing it, we typically try to focus on things that we know we can rank for. So there's certain times we will write a post that, it's just like, oh, we're never going to rank for this, but I care about it enough to where I want to share it. But generally we try to prioritize with where we can rank. And then the third kind of, what's performing well on the blog and seeing if we can write other things in order to cross-link, well-performing posts with new posts. And then we also survey our audience once a year. So we send out a survey in January every year. It's usually about 20 questions. It's pretty thorough. And we do a giveaway, generally a gift card to REI or some other outdoor retailer. If you do the survey, you'll be entered to win a gift card. And we got 1,200 respondents this year. So that has been a huge, it's just helped educate us on like what our audience really wants. And I actually want to just quickly go back to something Joe said about paid content versus unpaid content. In our survey this year, we've been kind of toying with the idea of doing a membership of some sorts. And we asked our audience, if we were to offer a paid membership of any kind, what topics would they be interested in? And over half the people responded and said that they would be interested in some sort of paid a paid group related to outdoors and hiking. And so that was really helpful to know. And so we're actually launching a new membership next week called Barefoot Outdoors Club. And so we're going to kind of start experimenting with some more paid models while still keeping all of the blog content free. But in the paid membership, you get access to workshops and other things. And I know that was sort of an aside, but that was just one really helpful thing we learned in our survey this year. So I think it's a great thing for people to do in order to engage their audience and learn what they want.
No, that's really interesting. It's amazing what you can learn, for the survey to find out those opportunities. And frankly, just getting people to respond to a survey can be exciting in its own realm to get that information. So we have a question from, and forgive me, Abdeslam.
Probably have to take it off mute there, lower right-hand corner, if you want to ask your question. We might have to come back.
I think
why don't you keep it back there? You go ahead and ask one more question, Anna, and we'll try again.
So, Kristin, you were talking about switching about your own plant life-based, moving to a plant life-based from an eating consumption. And I'm curious of how that topic your audience has responded to that topic. Epicurious came out recently saying that they weren't going to publish any more beef recipes from that. They weren't going to delete their old beef recipes. So I'm just curious if that is a topic. Obviously, it's a personal topic to you, but how your audience has been responding to that one.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, I think that we don't want to bombard people with it, and I'm not. I'm approaching it from a perspective that this is working for me, and here's why I'm doing it. But I think in the outdoor world, especially, people are concerned about the environment. They're concerned about their health. That's why they're outside, exercising and on the trail. And so I think some of this healthy living and plant-based stuff resonates well with some people. I mean, people are certainly not afraid to tell me that it doesn't resonate with them, which is fine. And that's helpful too, because it's like, well, we don't want to turn people away, but I still want the freedom to talk about some of these things that are new and important to me that, in a way that I feel like I can fit them in. So, for instance, we wrote a post about the best plant-based backpacking meals, or how to get how to make sure you're energized while you hike if you're on a plant-based diet. So trying to find ways to work it in where it feels related to the other things that we write about. And we just try to we try not to tell people what to do. We just present them with the information and let people make their own decision if that's something that interests them. And I think as long as we kind of use a friendly tone and rather than, forceful, it seems like it's been well received.
That makes total sense from that. And it actually leads me to this question. So talking about your name development, right? You're associated with this brand. Your name is associated with it, but you made the deliberate choice not to name it for yourself, from that. And I'm curious because that's one of the things with a lot of content creators who are looking to create a business, they may do it under their own name. And so if you could talk a little bit about how you decided not to go that direction.
Just to clarify, so you mean naming my blog Bearfoot Theory versus like KristinBor.com?
Right, exactly. Yep, you got it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, so the name, I have a Grateful Dead dancing bear tattoo on my foot. So that is where the name comes from. I didn't really put that much thought into it. I had the idea when I was first trying to come up with a blog name, and I liked it, and I just went with it. And it's spelled like bear, like the animal, just in case anybody, I get some people like, why is it called Barefoot? You don't hike barefoot, do you? No, it's BEAR. In hindsight, I think it's been helpful because I think people wouldn't remember my name, but when we were out hiking yesterday actually, and some guy, we struck up a conversation, and somehow it came up that we were traveling in a van, and I was like, oh, well, he was interested, and I said, oh, you should, check out my website. It's Bearfoot Theory. And he was like, oh, you're Bearfoot Theory. Like, he like recognized the name, like, oh yeah, I read that blog. But like, if I told him, oh, my name's Kristin, he probably wouldn't have put two and two together. And so I think just for branding strength, I think it's been helpful. I would say the downside is that people don't always know how to spell it. So I always have to say it's bear like the animal. And that, I think if I could go back and if I were to pick something different, I would just make sure that it's something that was like easy to spell and obvious. But, I could have gone with something like Kristin Travels, but, that just felt kind of generic when there's probably 1,000 other Kristins that have travel blogs, and I just wanted to pick something unique that would differentiate myself.
No, thanks, Kristen. I think outside of the spelling issue, I think you naming it not yourself, which we talk to a lot of content entrepreneurs that, it's their Instagram, it's their name, it's their blog, everything is about them. And even the emails are very personal, and they want to have an exit someday, and they want to not be 100% in the business, but they feel that they can't because it's their name, and they don't know how to switch that. So I guess that's my question. You don't have to say that you're leaving the business at any time, but I guess from an exit strategy or what, maybe talk about what's next for you. I guess that has to make it a little bit easier because it's not your name all over everything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't plan on like selling my blog or, I love my job. It provides the lifestyle and freedom that I want. So I don't see why I would try to get out per se, but I would like to be able to step back from just doing the regular blog maintenance. And I really have. So last fall, I took a 4-month break from August to December. I deleted social media from my phone. I logged out of my email, and I went on a 4-month vacation basically. And Linda and my team were able to step in and take over. And they weren't really posting on social media necessarily, but like Linda was still sending out the emails. And so instead of, before I left, I was able to introduce her in the emails and say, hey, I'm taking some time off. Linda's going to take over, the email duties for the next few months. And, she's been an integral part of the team. So it's been great because I am able to kind of, talk from a we perspective instead of an I. And that sort of takes some of the onus off me to where I always have to be the one answering all the emails and writing all the Instagram and Facebook posts and writing all the blogs. So now, we write things on the blog. We're publishing articles by the Bearfoot Theory team. And so, that's the assumption that I'm overseeing that process, but I might not necessarily be the one writing every word, and that's okay. And so I think that for me, just like being able to kind of take that break, realize that like it doesn't always have to be me, it can be the team, was really, really helpful. And I do think that, having a name that's not my like, I'm evolving out of being a personal brand to being hopefully something bigger, than just myself, more of a community where, other people are contributing. And so that's been a nice process. And I'm excited to kind of see, what we're able to accomplish now that I'm able to kind of take a step back from the day-to-day blog maintenance and like think about the bigger picture. Like I'm able to focus on this new membership we're going to launch. We did a festival 2 summers ago that took a lot of my attention, and so just being able to kind of step away from those day-to-day routine duties so I can think about the big picture and the next steps has been, I think, really helpful for the growth of the business.
No, that's great. And Linda's on the call, so she's been very helpful, great team member. So it's great that you have that flexibility. I guess my recommendation for anyone listening to this is if you do have things that are your own name, now would be a really good time to think of a secondary brand. So if you have an email newsletter that's your email newsletter, what is it? What is the name of it? And you can start moving away because at some time, you might want an exit, and you keep your options open. If you do that like you have, you can stay in the business. You don't have to. You could be just strategy. You could take time off. All those options are a little bit more open if you don't have your name as the key brand. So I have a couple more questions, Kristin, and then we're going to wrap it up here. What would you say is the worst advice you've heard for content entrepreneurs who've been trying to do what you're doing, whether it's blogging or YouTube? What are some really some bad advice out there that you would say people are getting wrong?
That is a good question. I'm not sure I can come up with an answer off the top of my head, but I think people enter sometimes with unrealistic expectations, especially, I think I see just a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to start a travel blog, or oh, I'm going to start a van life blog, and it's just going to take off right away. Well, it's, I think anybody who's really tried knows that it takes time. And so for me, when I was transitioning away from my old career to my new one, I wasn't traveling all the time right away. I was hunkered down in an office, probably, 60 or 80 hours a week, some weeks. And then I would go take a trip, and then I would come home and I would write about it. But it was really helpful to have that sort of period where I was really focused without a lot of distractions. And, I think that was just helped me kind of get through that transition. I also got a part-time job working retail at REI at the time, which was great because I got a discount on gear that I was writing about on my blog. And that really helped me with, being able to afford my lifestyle while my blog wasn't really bringing in any money. So I think just having realistic expectations of the timeline in terms of, how long it takes to really build a business. I think that's important.
Let's break that down a little bit, because it's important, because I get the same questions where they're like, okay, how long does it take to build a loyal audience and whatnot? So like I find generally when we look at all the examples in the book, it generally takes a good 2 to 3 years to build a loyal audience where you're actually able to generate some kind of revenue from it. So it sounds like, how long were you blogging every day on a consistent basis till you knew you had something? I guess what was that aha moment, or what was that point in the business where you said, maybe this will be a business and I don't have to go back to corporate America anymore?
I think there was a few aha moments for me because, when you're making no money, the bar is really low, right? You're like, oh, I just got my first $100 sponsored post. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make it. But it was progress for me. So each time that I had, something that was a little bit more than the last one, it gave me hope. And, but I think like my first big aha moment was after I quit my job. I quit my job in April. I launched my job blog in June, and then in September I spent 22 days backpacking the John Muir Trail in California. And I came home from that trip and I published a gear list. And all of a sudden, that gear list was the top hit in Google for John Muir Trail gear, or JMT gear, or whatever. And we still rank in one of the top couple of hits today. I started making my first affiliate revenue from that. And it was like, my first stable source of passive income that came in every month. It wasn't a lot at first, but it was enough to be like, okay. And then I saw it growing every month. It got bigger and bigger. And, that just made me feel like I was onto something. So originally I told myself I was going to give myself a year to see if this would pan out. And if not, I would just find a different job than what I was doing before, but go back to my old career path in a new location, basically. And after a year went by, I definitely wasn't like, I didn't feel like I had made it, but I can't tell you how many times I felt like, I'm just on the cusp of making it, just a little bit more time and I'll make it. And I'm just so glad I stuck with it, because I thought after a year, well, if I quit now, all this work that I put into it was for nothing. And so I just had the mindset that I was going to make it work no matter what I had to do. And if I had to go get another part-time job, like, I would do that. But I wasn't going to give up and go back to like a full-time job that would take my attention away from, continuing to build my business. And it was about 2 years, before I had a pretty, what was, felt like a sizable audience. Probably I'd have to look at my traffic, but it was probably 2 years, where I was getting like maybe 100,000 page views a month or something around there. I don't remember exactly, but and then since then it's just exponentially grown. Gets easier and easier over time because people tell their friends, and just the word gets out.
Well, it's what you did different than what most content creators do is you just kept going. You get through that 6 to 9 month mark of doubt and like, what am I doing here? And this is not going to work. And then once you make it to that 2 year mark, you're like, okay, good. We've got a thing. This is fantastic. I got 2 more questions for you, Kristin, then we're going to wrap up. This one is, because I know you're on Pinterest, I know you're on Instagram, you've got the blog going. What are you looking at other diversification platforms? Are you looking at podcasting? Are you looking at TikTok? Are you looking at Twitch? Are you looking at social audio? Is anything kind of next on the horizon for taking your audience a new direction?
Oh boy, every time a new network comes up, there's the temptation for me to, oh gosh, I got to do this too. But I only have so much energy and time to spend on all of these platforms. So I've really tried to just say, okay, these are the ones that are working for me. Facebook is working, Instagram is working, Pinterest is working. Twitter doesn't really work for me. So I just don't really spend that much time on it. And TikTok, I could jump on the bandwagon, but again, like, that would require me neglecting the things that are already working. And so, I just try to stay focused. But what we're really working on is we're building our membership, the Barefoot Outdoors Club, on Mighty Networks. And I think a lot of my audience wants a community that's off social media, that's somewhere where they're not, have to scrolling past things that they don't like in order to get to what they do like. And so that's sort of where we're going to focus our energy, at least for the next year, to see if that takes off. It's launching next week, and the activities start beginning June 1st. So that'll be fun experiment, and we'll just have to see how it goes.
Are you charging for the membership? You are, correct?
Yes, it's going to be, at least at the beginning, we're offering a free 30-day trial, and then it's going to be $9 a month.
Sounds like a deal. That's fantastic. should get on that one. So I got one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up, Kristin. So we're either listening today or listening on our Content Inc. podcast. There's a lot of content entrepreneurs or content creators that want to be content entrepreneurs. What's the one thing that you would say, do this? This is what you have to do to be a successful content entrepreneur.
I would say learn SEO from the get-go. I mean, that's just what's been the most helpful thing for me. If I didn't have good SEO, my blog would not be where it is today. And so learn what you have to learn in order to get familiar with that, and make sure you spend the time to optimize your post for that.
Absolutely, and on YouTube as well. So not just for Google or search engines, but for the big second search engine in the world, YouTube. Kristin, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. So not just for Google, but like Pinterest is SEO based.
Yep.
On YouTube, we use something called TubeBuddy, and that helps us optimize for keywords there. So yeah, whatever the platform is that you're really focused on, as long as there's a keyword element to really hone in on that.
Kristin, before I close this out, where's the best place people can get more information about you and Bearfoot Theory?
Yes, my website is bearfoottheory.com, but it's bear like the animal. And I'm Bearfoot Theory on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest.
Okay, back to Joe now. I cut the interview off right there because Kristin and I went on jabbering about the launch of the Content Inc. book when we recorded that on Clubhouse. It was about a week before launch, and you didn't need to hear any of that. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Kristin Bor. You know, riches and niches, right? There are a lot of case studies we focused on in the Content Inc. book, but Kristin's always sticks with me for some reason. She just did the work consistently over time, diversified into Pinterest and Instagram when it made sense, and generates revenue in multiple ways today. Simply fascinating. Join us next Thursday on the Content Inc. podcast for another very special interview and case study from the Content Inc. book. Good luck, and go out and change the world for the better.